Good morning everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are making this video for a really fresh and breaking updates about Italian citizenship by descent. Today we will talk about the decision, the judgment 24045 that was made by the Supreme Court of Cassazione, the Supreme Court of Cassazione, Section Unified, this long-awaited decision. And as many expected, the decision was positive. That we have now a good decision, something which is really huge, because it does not just fix a problem that was a problem for Jure Sanguinis in the last 2 years, but really open doors and potentially really open big gates for new opportunities and new options for applicants for Italian citizenship by descent. This is Marco Bersani from the Bersani Law Firm&Partners, an Italian immigration law firm with expertise on Italian citizenship application. So do not lose any more time and let's start. We are so happy today to share this information, to talk about the judgment, the decision from the Supreme Court of Cassation, with the judgment, as I said, from July 26, the judgment number 24045. That was a long-awaited judgment. You know, there was, if you are following all the updates, there was a discussion of mid-April 2026 about these arguments, about the Jure Sanguinis, specifically about the so-called minor case issue. And so we were waiting for this judgment. This judgment is very important. Just to give you a brief explanation of why it's so important, well, we are talking about, from one side, a judgment that is fixing a mistake, a bad interpretation that was made about the law regarding the so-called minor case issue. So regarding what happened to an applicant. So when you file a case for Italian citizenship by descent, and your Italian line, you have an Italian ancestor who had a child, and that child was a minor when the Italian ancestor naturalized. Well, as you know, in the last 2 years, this was actually a problem not for all the courts, but was a problem for some courts. It was a problem for all the consulates, for sure, and for all the municipalities, because at least at the administrative level, if you're going to file an application through the consulate, through the municipality, well, your application under the new minor issue interpretation, well, your application had to be denied, had to be rejected, because of this new interpretation that was actually introduced the first time in 2023. And at the very end, in 2024, also the ministry made a circular, made a communication by saying to all the consulates, to all the municipality, well, from that moment, if you're receiving application with a minor case situation, you need to deny the case. So as you understand, the problem was a real problem, because many thousand and hundreds of thousands of people were actually were denied, because based on this interpretation. An interpretation that we always said it was completely wrong, completely nonsense. And today, we are filming this video on July 2027. Well, today, I mean, the publication was done, that judgment was published by the Supreme Court of Cassazione, Section Unified. Before talking about the judgment itself, and so why it's so important and what type of consequences, positive consequences it carries, let's clarify a little bit why it's so important. We are not just talking about a general tribunal court victory. Okay, this is for sure important when we post the news updates about some victories with the court. But now we are talking about the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of Cassation, Section Unified. So this is the highest level of jurisdiction in Italy. And this is very important because what the Section Unified, so you need to think to the Supreme Court, divided in different sections, they are all reunited. They are all together to take a final decision, and that final decision in some way it's a sort of legal, legal mandatory interpretation for all the court and also all actually the administrative authorities. So in this way, as you understand, it's very important, because right now, let's think to all pending cases, but also all cases that were rejected by the consulate. If you are still in the deadline for appealing, you can now for sure appeal the decision by saying I was denied because I had a minor case, so this is now completely wrong, and it was confirmed by the Supreme Court. So this is really huge for sure regarding the minor case issue. So if you have a minor case issue, if you have a pending case with a minor case situation, well, today if the case is still pending, be happy, because of course before the decision, of course, this precedent, the judgment from the Cassazione can be for sure 100% used for supporting your claim. And of course we expect, and it's almost sure of course, that the minor case issue won't be an issue anymore, and so the case can be approved. This is really huge for other reasons. This is also used, as I said, for other reasons. We need to think about it, about a little bit about the so-called minor case and what is written into the judgment of this minor case decision. So, as you recall, is not the first time, if you're following, of course, all the updates, all the news, is not the first time the Supreme Court is make this type of ruling. In 2022, there was a really huge, always from the Section Unified, there was also another huge ruling, another judgment from the Cassazione, the Supreme Court of Cassazione Section Unified, which said and set a legal principle that was used by everybody, but also by all the courts to also support the claim, by saying that all the Italian citizenship by descent right, your right of Italian citizenship is by blood, is Jure Sanguinis by definition. And so what does it mean? It means that your right, you have your right since your birth. So from the moment you were born, that moment, exactly that moment, you are already an Italian citizen. Simply, of course, it was not there was not a formal declaration. You need a formal declaration just to formalize your citizenship, but legally you are already an Italian citizen. And so the Supreme Court in 2022 already set this principle: the right of Italian citizenship is by birth, is by blood, is from the moment of your birth, nobody can touch it, nobody can cancel it, only you can voluntarily renew to it. That's the only situation where you can renew, you can lose your Italian citizenship right. But beside the situation, because it's you that you want, specifically expressly want to renew, nobody can touch it. This decision, at the very end, repeats the same principle, but it's way more important today because, you know, that previous decision was made in 2022, when all the mess that we are facing today didn't exist. It was before Tajani decree, it was born the Tajani law, it was before all the Constitutional Court proceeding and the decision 63. So the decision now is even more important because today, after the Tajani law, after the first Constitutional Court decision, the second one is still expected, as you know, it was now referred to the European Court of Justice. So, but after everything else, today we have this decision which is really, really heavy, really, really important, because after all the mess, the Supreme Court says that all people, they are claiming Italian citizenship by descent, assuming, of course, you are able to prove the line, well, keep in mind that the principles are still the same. The right of Italian citizenship by descent is a right by blood, by Jure Sanguinis by definition, it means by blood. So from the moment you were born, your parents, your grandparents, so with all the line, at the moment of the birth, in the moment where there is the automatic, by the law, ipso jure is called technically, automatically by the law, there is the transmission. There's no need to make declaration. It's automatic by blood, automatic from the moment of the birth, and nobody can touch it. So, why this is huge today? Well, not just for fixing, of course, the so-called minor case interpretation, but for potentially all the cases. You need to think that right now, of course, there is a huge legal battle against the Tajani decree in several ways, from several sides, and you know, people are trying to actually there are many courts that are proving cases by going through the Tajani court, by saying I tried to get my appointment, I was able to make the application, but at the same time there was a consular paralysis, I was not able to do that, and so on. So right now the battle is really, really more important today, is really more valuable today because of this decision. Potentially, and please note, this is one important thing that we need to highlight, because it doesn't mean that this decision cancels the Tajani regulation. Pay attention, this must be important, that we are not saying that, okay, Tajani is not a problem anymore, the Tajani law is not a problem anymore because now we have the Cassazione. No, pay attention. The Tajani law is still there, and the same ruling, the same judgment of the Cassazione is saying, well, the Tajani law is there, so of course we are not making a ruling against the Tajani law, simply because it was not the subject of the ruling. The subject was the minor case. So of course the Cassazione didn't say against. But also, if the same judgment says the Tajani rule is still there, we know about the first decision from the Constitutional Court and so on, the Tajani rule is there. But at the same time, we need to consider that when we have a line, an Italian citizenship by the same case, the process must be considered as following. So each person, there's from each generation, between each generation, there's an automatic transmission of Italian citizenship by blood, by descent, by Jure Sanguinis. So this is the way to consider. That's very important, and in some ways is also in contrast again with the Tajani, because this is actually, in my opinion, in open, of course, contrast with the Tajani ruling, because of course, as you know, the Tajani ruling set a principle that it's like your citizenship is like it's not acquired by birth, which is exactly the contrast of what the Cassazione now states correctly. So these open potentially a really huge, not just a door, but a gate can open. Because potentially you can now say and go to the court. Please note those arguments are not tested yet and will be, of course, will be forward at the court now. Technically, we can consider that all people born before the Tajani decree, potentially they can be considered by a court as eligible. Why? Because given the principle set, again, confirmed again in 2026 by the Supreme Court of Cassation Section Unified, that the right of Italian citizenship is acquired automatically, there's no need of make declaration, but automatically, by ipso jure, so automatically by law. It transmits generation by generation at the moment of the birth. Well, let's say I was born in 1980, for example, well, it was before the Tajani rules, it was all the mess, because beside what happened next, I already got, if my parents were Italian, I already got the right by blood for this principle. So this really opened a huge discussion, and it's very important because it's opened a way to really strongly, way more better than before, strongly support the claim with the courts. Of course, with the consulate, this decision is good because it solved the minor case, so the consulate cannot anymore deny the minor case, that's for sure. It's still open how, of course, they will reject, and of course they will still reject the cases by applying simply the Tajani rule. All these arguments can be made only through a judicial system, only through the court. So if you have a claim, let's say you still have a case like consular paralysis, you cannot go to the consulate, you have an eligible case, well, you can go there, still go there, and now supporting your claim way more better. Given the fact, please note, that is just now a prediction that we are doing for the close future, what we think that now what will happen. We think that a lot of people now are going to file a claim through the judicial system, of course, to appeal. If you got the denial, the rejection of a minor case, of course, you have all the right to go to appeal. Besides, you got the denial from a consulate, or you got denial from a municipality, or also if you got the denial from the court, that also can happen. So, for sure, this makes sense. Right now, most importantly, what makes sense is to still fighting for all the cases. Please note the Tajani rule is still in place. We are still waiting now that the European Court of Justice will also make the ruling after the Constitutional Court to forward a few questions to the European institutions. So right now the battle is still open, but today we really have really strong arguments, really strong grounds to fight the case even more better. Now, of course, this is really important because it's not just a bunch of courts, a bunch of tribunal decisions are also very important, very important, but now we have the highest court in Italy and the highest court in the section unified, so the highest way to make a ruling in Italy. And when there is a Cassation, the Cassazione ruling with the second unified that make a ruling, all the tribunal will follow that ruling. So of course, pay attention. Again, this is not a guarantee. We are not saying that right now this is the way because for sure your case can be successful. Nobody can guarantee a successful application, a successful outcome. That must be clear. But today we have all the more legal grounds than in a few months ago. Now we have more legal grounds to go forward to fight the cases, because right now, technically, as an additional argumentation, we can also say that technically, if you were born before 2025, technically by the Cassazione, you might be considered also eligible. Doesn't change, of course, all the other facts. It doesn't change all the fights against the Tajani restrictions, all the Tajani limitations still remain in place. If you have questions, something you want to ask, as always, there's the comment section. Please note, as always, that we cannot do consultation here. We cannot reply to specific question here in the comments. If you have cases, question, particular question, legal question, you need to book a consultation call. You can reach us through the contact form, reaching us to make also an eligibility check, a case-by-case check on your, not just on a legal case, on eligibility, but also on the best strategy for your case. Because please note, there are now no copy and paste cases today. Today, each case is different. There's a legal tailored strategy for each case. And that's very important, especially specifically those days we are living in a sort of a limbo where things are really evolving month by month, so each case must be considered individually with an individual legal strategy. Thank you so much. We will keep you updated as soon as we have more updates to share. As you notice, we are not doing a lot of videos because we are just making videos when there are really relevant updates to share. But we will keep you updated, of course, as soon as there will be updates, victories actually, and of course any other relevant news that can provide you more additional information and hopefully more strong legal grounds on the future of Italian citizenship by the same cases. Thank you so much.